Hi, it's Simon and welcome to another Notion from Scratch video. In this Notion tutorial, I'll take you through how to add subtasks and dependent tasks to a Notion task and project manager. I'm also in a new studio. What do you think? We'll also create featured database views that ensure both parent and subtasks are visual on your dashboard, and we'll even create a task weighting report view so that you can see if a task is actionable or dependent on another. This is the fourth part of my larger task manager build in this series, so you might just want to jump back to the start of the series via the link in the description to build the task and project setup first and add recurring tasks into your system, or if you already have a task database, just watch and start from here and it works as a standalone video. If you are new to Notion, this is a great place to start. If you're an old hand, you'll love the advanced features and stages of these builds for more powerful formulas, I think, and how to get the most out of Notion. Finally, a lot of what you see in this build is also part of my LifeOS Notion templates, so you might like to check out the tour video of my Notion LifeOS or simplified Notion systems first via the description, or you can just scrap all of this and go download them at bettercreating.com. Here's a quick recap of the task and project databases I have up until this build so far. So there's a task database with a due date and deadline date columns and a couple of other properties that help you organize tasks such as sortable daily priority fields and a context tag. And of course, a status column that can be used to arrange task views and check them off with a filter. Then we've got this projects database that is related to the task database. What's fab about that is you can then create these filtered views. I use a filter based on project is empty to filter tasks from the inbox into the system, and a weekly review reminder for projects. And finally, a project template page helps you to view tasks by project, and the Notion button automations can be used to make adding tasks and reviewing projects easier. That was all in the previous videos. Let's get on with the build. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is set up our parent tasks and sub items, or parent items and sub items in the database. We're gonna go to the tasks database. This works in any database in Notion. So we're gonna go in here and we're gonna use the little dots at the top and turn on sub items. So pretty simple, this bit. Click on that. Now what you'll see that's done within my database, you'll see at the end here we have parent item and sub item. If we click into sub item, just to show you what it's done, it's created a relation to this database. So it's related the database to itself. We often call these self-referencing relations. What it means is it's done it all automatically for us, which is really helpful because it adds this kind of sub item element to it. Now, you can see sub items link through tasks to parent and back to tasks and so on and so forth. I'm just gonna change this one to task so it's clear. And in parent items, I'm gonna change that to parent tasks. However, the other thing I wanna do is edit the parent tasks property, and where it says limit, I wanna change the limit to 1 page. The reason we're gonna do that is because you wanna make sure that you can only ever have 1 parent task for a subtask, because they always want to sit under the same thing. Let me show you what I mean here. So first of all, let's create a new task. We have this template we can click on, and we're going to call this Create Notion Tutorial. Great, so that's the parent task. Let's call it Parent, so it's really obvious. Great, it's a new main task, all done. Now, what we can see here is this arrow, and we can now see sub items will turn up below it. Another way to do it is to click in here, and the first thing I would like us to do with this subtask view is actually edit it. So we're going to go into the 3 dots in the top corner, customize the page here, and you'll see that where it says subtask, if we can change that to view as a page section. Click on that, and now you'll see adding subtask has sat within it. That means I can now add a new task, create a new one, for example, plan video for tutorial subtask 1, and we're gonna create that. And if we come back out, you can see that it's listed below. You can also see in our new view, it's related. If we create a second one, another way to do it is here. We're gonna click new sub item. You'll see it's using the main task template. We're gonna have to fix that in a moment. And we'll call this one film video. There's our example. And what's happening is you can see that these have double lists. Now, I want to make sure that if I want to link it to something else, maybe chapter pepper, it won't add that as well. And you see it doesn't, it's moved it, it's got rid of it because it's only allowed one, it's moved it down to here. Whereas this sub-item, if we undo what we did, will allow 2 different items and then more to be added to it. And that's what we need, a parent task that can only be a singular item. Now this was the next problem. So we've edited all of this. We're getting this issue with our template for tasks. So new main tasks, I'm gonna go in and just edit this quickly. And I'm actually just gonna call this parent task so we don't get confused. Come back out. I'm then going to stop it being the default by well, it's up to you. You could just say new task and be done with templates. It's the same for everything. It's up to you. But if you did want to go further and have 2 templates, you can set the empty view for all tasks as the template, duplicate this, and we're going to call this one new subtask, and you could even change the icon so that you then have 2 options for it. If you like to have a visual representation, for example, we could go in here and just set them as new subtasks. So you might prefer that as a look so that you can see a visual representation. If you don't mind, don't worry about it. Great, so there we go. We now have our parent task and sub items. Now, if we go back to the dashboard views, which is where I manage things, it's all got a little bit confusing. And that is because this view is currently not set up for sub and parent items. So in any view where you want to see that, which I would suggest is all the task views, you're going to want to go into the dots for that view, go to sub items where it currently says hidden now, and show sub items in view. You can also go to advanced and show nesting toggle on title. I think that's really useful to be able to see where there are more. You're then gonna have a clear view of tasks within there. You're probably not gonna need to worry about it in add new task in the system we've already made. The other one to do at the moment on here, I would go to the to-do list view, and I would make sure here for table views that sub items are shown. It's only table views you can set this up for. And it will just mean that if you want to then add items, you can do that really simply. Great. Now, currently, sub and parent tasks are going to still be a little bit confusing within these filtered views, and we'll move on to that later on in terms of how we filter the dashboard views. But the next thing I want to do is go in and set up dependencies, because this gets really exciting really quickly. Now, dependent tasks essentially mean, dependencies mean you can't do a task until another is complete. So it's either being blocked by something or it's blocking another task. This means if you have a workflow you want to structure, you can do it in Notion with this new system. So let's go into the task database and just see it within that view for ease here. So we've got creating a Notion tutorial here, and then we've got our different subtasks. And I'm going to set some dates for these. Say that this one needs to be here to here. There you go. And you can see here that I've added due dates for when they're going to be done. So I'm going to plan the video on the 4th and the 5th. I'm going to film the video on the 7th and the 8th and edit it from the 11th to the 13th, for example. And my aim for the thing to happen is on the 14th. Now, it's possible you might just want to like lay this out over the time that you're doing it all, but I would say using the new dependencies feature, avoid that. Always make the parent task when you want to tick this off, essentially. Now this is how it works. It's very similar to the parent and subtask relation field that's created. We're going to click into here and turn dependencies on. Before we do that, this is why I've been waiting so long to release this video. I knew that subtask and dependencies were coming out when I started this series, but also very recently they've added this automatic shifting of dates. Now this is really powerful and so helpful. If you turn this on and you move the first task in a list back, everything else will be shuffled with it. Now, I would say you can have a couple of options. Do not automatically shift, so you just do it yourself. You can have shift only when dates overlap, so if you push something back and it overlaps with another, then it will get moved, or you can keep the distances between them. I would say, if you want to use this, stick to shift only when dates overlap. I would separate start and end dates. I think that's very, very helpful for clarity, just so you can kind of see where they are. And we're going to turn on dependencies. Now, by turning those on, it's actually created similar to parent tasks and subtasks, blocked by and blocking. I want to leave those as they are. So this means a task is blocked by another, and this means it's blocking another. Now, why don't we just move these back? Because you might actually want to use these further up in your system if you want to set what is blocking or blocked by what. Now, I'll give you an example. I would say that the main task is going to be blocked by the final thing in the list of its subtasks. So we want to say that this is blocked by subtask 3 of that group. And there you can see this is currently blocking the final job. Now, another way to do this is to say that subtask 1 is blocking subtask 2. And we want to say that finally subtask 2 is blocking subtask 3. Now we have a chain of actions which go 1, 2, 3 and up to the top. Great. Not very easy to see like this though, is it? And that is why we want to make a timeline view, which is really where dependencies come into their own. So we're going to add within our main database view a new view. We're going to set it as a timeline. I want to make sure it's by due date. I'm going to separate the start and end dates. And actually, why not? Let's show the table of the tasks as well. And now in this view, this is probably going to make a little bit more sense to you. Look at all those recurring tasks that our system's created in the previous one. But there you go. So it goes 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 3, 3 goes to the end. And for example, this is how you can move things around and do things like remove that and drag it from here to link tasks. Really, really powerful. Now, if you want to understand that better, you can click into here and understand. If you go into advanced settings, you can see that it's set to blocking. You could set it to a property of block by, which would give you a red arrow going back. I think this is much more intuitive because you go, that's blocking that. It's up to you. There you go. So that is our timeline view, and we're going to call this Dependencies timeline. And why don't we do timeline? Great. So now we've created that, we can add it to our system. So we're going to go back into the main page. So within our action view, I would open this up, add a new view. I want to find the tasks database here, and we're going to use the dependencies timeline. And in action view, we want to go to today so we can just see if this is working. You want to now filter and sort this. So I would say you want to filter this by done, and where done, advanced filter is not complete. Save that for everyone. And usually with this, we would also say, as we have with the rest of my system, add another filter, advanced filter, and where related project is not empty. Let's just go back up to here and add a project for our main task, side hustle. And what you'll see here is that, first of all, that's grayed out because these haven't been given a parent task, which is fine. You can still see them and they haven't been allocated. But also if we go down to here, we can't see any of the subtasks, even though they need to be done. And this is where filtering has to come in so that this makes more sense. But that's how you're gonna add your dependencies timeline, so you can manage it. You could put that wherever you want it to be. I would also suggest if you go into your project views that we created previously, you might like to add one here. I think that's a very, very good idea. So let me just show you that first, and then we will solve this issue of how we make sure that all the tasks turn up by filtering these databases. So make sure you've added your dependencies timeline and you've added the basic rules of done is not done and related project is not empty into the view. We can now go and just edit the projects. So let's go into the projects dashboard. There they are. I'm going to click into here, edit the new project template we made in the previous video, and we're going to edit that. We have our task view here. This should be as simple as adding a tasks view, dependencies timeline, filter that timeline by related project contains this template, save that for everyone, sort by due date, ascending, save for everyone, hide the filters and sorts. And while you're here, don't forget within the project's template that we made, we're going to need to make sure that sub-items are in there, and with dependencies, we want to make sure that they're on. Great. So now we're going to go into side hustle. I'm going to delete everything in this because I want to reinstate the template. New project template. There's a little bit of a problem at the moment that we can't see subtasks within the dashboard views, but we'll do the filtering for that in a little bit. The first thing I want to do though is create a report view for whether a task is actionable or not. So here in my live OS, here is an example of subtasks that are due, and you can see what's actionable and what's waiting. Now that is essentially a formula that is based on a roll-up that I'm calling blocked by status. And you can see that essentially it says if the blocked by status roll up is less than 1, it's waiting, otherwise it's actionable. So if it's not 100%, it's waiting. So this is what we're gonna do to make that. Let's go back to our system. I'm gonna click back through actually to my tasks database. And in here, we're going to create a new property and create a roll up. We're gonna call this blocked by status. So this won't be seen in the system, it will just work in the background. That's why, again, we have the database view. Now, we're going to configure that by clicking on the little writing sign. The relation, I want it to be blocked by, and then I want to pick the status, so is it done or not, and I want to show the percentage group that's complete. So that will be 0 or less than 100 until all of the subtasks are complete, right? Or anything that's blocking it is done. So as soon as blocked by status hits 100% done, you will know that everything is complete. So that's gonna be really useful. So let's now create the formula. We're gonna go in here, we're gonna create a new formula, and we're gonna call this Actionable. And here, you might wanna change the icon to a tick sign, for example. Now this formula, we want it to be if blocked by status, go and find that, there it is less than 1, write waiting, otherwise write actionable. Close the brackets. What we should find is this isn't blocked by anything, so it's actionable. These are waiting. I set this as done. Now it's actionable. So that's all working, although it looks a bit boring, right? So the other thing I do is within the written section here, you can often do this with using the function button, but I'm just gonna do edit symbols and emojis. And I'm gonna find a color here. So I'm gonna do red, find a little dot, there it is. Add that in, space. And then in actionable, I'm gonna put green. Find the little dot, put it in, space, done. And now we have a really nice report view, which we can check works by making that in progress. It should mean that the top one is not actionable, it's waiting, there you go. But everything else is doable. And then if we make all of these not started, you should find that the top 2 are waiting and the first one that's doable is actionable. So that is how you create that report view. Now for this, you would want to go back and in your view here, you might want to do things like show the properties. So show that in each view. In your to-do list, you might want to show the property. There it is, show it and work out where you want it. So I might move mine up because I think it's better near the beginning. Maybe after daily priority, there you go. Shows it there. Look at that. So that's dependent tasks done. Now we just need to make sure that our tasks appear in our dashboard views. So let's get on with filtering the dashboard views. We've got a couple of things going on here with our dashboards. In my action dashboard, if we go down to the task that will have all our subtasks and open up the subtasks, they're not showing up because they're not being filtered for. Our current filters say that just has to be that it's related to a project and done is not checked. So that's not going to work at the moment because, as you can see in this view in the inbox, the place where everything goes, it's processed by being related to a project. So a quick example here, if I relate this to a project, it disappears and turns up in the main view. or if I set it as done, it disappears. So that's our issue. Currently, subtasks aren't being filtered by that system. So we need a way to understand that tasks are related to projects. Now, of course, I could just relate it to the project and it disappears, but I don't think that's the right approach, because I only want to really relate the parent task to the project, and everything else should just automatically be related to the project, right? So there's two things we can do. We need to create a reference to those related projects of the parent tasks, and then we need to filter these dashboard views by that reference. So let's do that. Let's move across. Let's add a new property. We'll do it here. And we're going to add a roll-up. Call it project of parent task, because that's what it is. I want the relation to be the parent task. So currently it's just showing the original. So now we're going to configure that roll-up here. I want the property it shows, of course, to be the related project and show the original. And there you go. You've now got side hustle from the original task is shown in its subtasks. Really good. I'm going to leave that there so you can see what we're talking about for a moment. We can see that they're all linked. Now we have to filter by them. So this is where it gets a little more complicated. We're going to first of all need to filter the task inbox. Then I want to be able to filter the to-do list view, and then we'll do something about the board and calendar views later. So the first thing to do is filter this task inbox. It either needs to be that it has a related project and no parent task, so it disappears. So basically those two need to be empty, or related project can be empty, or it needs to be that it has a parent task and a project of parent task. So currently our filter is done is not done or recurring today. That was for the recurring tasks, and where related project is empty. I'm going to delete this and start again. So we're then going to add a new filter group, and we're going to do, first of all, where related project is empty, as we had, and then I'm actually going to turn that into a group within it. And where the project parent task, any, is empty, and that disappears everything. So that's for subtasks gone, but it's also got rid of all of the normal tasks that aren't related. So we're going to add another one here, add another filter group, or where related project is empty, add another one, and where parent task is empty. Great, so I think that's done the job, right? The subtasks have disappeared. Let's test it. Let's go and remove the project from our master task. It should mean that everything turns back up at the top. Yeah, it does. Fantastic. So now if we relate a subtask to a project, it will disappear. So that does work if you want to, but if I relate this entire group to a project, all of them disappear. Fantastic. That is our task inbox filter working. Save that for everyone, and if you need a moment, take a screenshot and you can work with it, because it's a little bit complicated, right? Next up, we actually need to make the subtasks appear in our to-do list in Action. And then for the board views, we're going to create a report to show how many subtasks are within parent tasks. So to do this in the to-do list, we're going to do this. I'm going to show you what I've done. There's quite a lot here, but essentially it's the same kind of logic. Now, if you want to pause the video and just take a screenshot of this, and you'll see that we're essentially doing the usual. So for standard tasks, project is not empty, due date is not empty, and status is not done. That's a group. Then we're going to do or, a different group, which is where any parent task is not empty, due date is not empty, and status is not done. So this is for anything where it's a subtask, essentially. And finally, we'll do one for subtasks which don't have a date. So this will both show them with dates and without dates, but you have the option to add those in if you would rather just see subtasks with dates. You would just omit this section. And then finally at the bottom, we have or where status is recurring today, which is a standalone thing, and it will just mean that this section will then always show the recurring tasks which we set up in the last video. So let's get started with project is not empty, due date is not empty, and status is not done. So if we go in, we're going to go to our rules. So related project is not empty and due date is not done. What I would like to do is turn that into a group, and this one we can do or, and we can do where done is recurring today, because we're going to need that a bit later on and it's a clean way to clean that up. Great, so we've got where related project is not empty, we're going to add another, and where due date is not empty, and add another filter where done is not complete. There you go. I'm going to do wrap in group, so that becomes wrapped in another group, and then in there we're going to add another group, make that an or, where project of parent task any is not empty, add another within that, and where due date is not empty, and then one more is going to add in here, and where done is not done again. Whoop, we've got two there, it's going to delete that. Great, so we have two versions, one for standard tasks and one for subtasks. Now for the final section, if we look back at what we did, we also want to do where parent task is not empty and status is not done. So we're going to jump back to this, and you might find you could do it like this. Duplicate the one below, change that to parent task is not empty, and we can remove that, and done is not done. Great, and then outside of it we have or done is recurring today. That's our filter. So let's just save that and take a little look at it. Now what you can see is wonderfully we have all of our tasks turning up within our example. If I tick one off, a subtask, it disappears. Let's undo that. And if I tick this off, it disappears it, but until we delete all of them, you won't see anything. Great, so everything is then complete. So we now have a filter that works for all of the different types of items. Now the one thing that will happen here is you will still be looking at tasks by date group, which we set up in a previous video. So whatever you set your date for the main task, the other task will sit under that. Of course, that becomes a little bit of an issue if you don't want to group things like this. Now, if you don't want to show them like this, you might want to consider adapting this so that you can change it so that there's a start date and an end date for items, but this gives you a load of tools to be able to filter and view this as you wish. That's how mine works, and I think it's really good. If you would rather be listing this as a kind of from date to date, I would suggest that you go back into dependencies, and if you set it to do not automatically shift, you'll find that you'll be able to set this as a start date and an end date for doing the whole thing, and these can then nest under it. So you would see all this further up and it would move down with you. So that's kind of worth considering. The only thing that is left to do now is adapt our this week by the date. So this is our weekly board view. Currently we only see master tasks, parent tasks in here. Let's give you a little example in our current week. I'm just going to add a subtask, which is find Pepper. Yeah, you have to find her before I chat to her. Great, that's my example. And there it is. So if we go into here, we can't see find Pepper. So the first thing you're going to want to do in this board view is click into here, go to properties, and I want to show subtasks. Now we can see the subtasks that are listed within it, and I can click through into subtasks. Actually, let's just make it look like one so you can really see what I'm talking about. So I think that's a really useful way to view subtasks. If we want this to make a little more sense that this is a subtask, I'm finally going to show you how to create this report view. This is in my action board on my Life OS template, and you'll see I have a subtask report. There's one subtask and then you see it below. I think that's really helpful. I've actually got a percentage completion, but that's maybe for another video because it gets way too complicated to create in the time we've got. So let's now add that. I'm going to go into our task database in the system. and we're gonna add these final elements. So we're gonna need a couple of things in order to do this. First of all, I want a roll up of the number of subtasks, really simply so that we're able to count them. So I'm going to go in, create a roll up, I'm gonna call this number of subtasks, and well, let's move it over to here, and we can make sure it works. So we're gonna click in here, we're gonna make the relation subtasks, we're gonna make the property subtasks, and we're gonna count all. We can see that works. There are 3 subtasks and it lists 3. So that is our counting of subtasks. Next, we need to create a report. So I'm going to create a formula and we're going to call this subtask concat. This is going to say concat, I want to put in brackets. I'm going to open the parentheses and I'm going to go to my symbols and I want to find an arrow down. Let's use that. We're going to put a space, close it, and then we're going to do format, and then I want to put in number of subtasks. So it's formatting that, close the commas on that, comma, and then we're going to open the parentheses again, and we're going to put a space, and we're going to write subtasks. Close the brackets, and we can now see it reports 3 subtasks. That's great. So we could just list that and it could say no subtasks. But I'm actually going to do one more so that if there are no subtasks, it doesn't show anything. Because in that board view, I don't really want to have to see that. So we're going to create one more formula. And we're going to call this subtask report. Let's maybe give this a tick sign so we can see it's the one we want to show. And this is going to be an if formula. So it's going to go if, and then we're going to find subtasks, is greater than 0. I want to propose the concat report. Otherwise, I want it to say nothing at all. And we close the brackets. So that's just parentheses with nothing in it. Done. Now you can see where there is a subtask, it's listed, and where there isn't, nothing is written. So all we now need to do is go back to our board views, and you can find all of these where you want to add them. For example, your dependencies timeline, you might actually want to show it in here. So we can go first of all into properties and show subtask report. Now that's really exciting. So now it shows that there are 3 subtasks, and when I click on the arrow, I can see them opened up. So that's going to be really powerful for our dependencies timeline. However, if we also go now back to the main dashboard, we made this for our board view, which is here. There's Fine Pepper. So now all we need to do is go in, find the property, a subtask report, and show it. And you want to place that above the subtasks that are listed, and it tells you that they're there. Fantastic. You also may, in this view, want to add whether something is actionable or not, and I would send that up to much nearer the top. So you can essentially now manage what it is that shows up in these views, but this addition of showing subtasks I think is really powerful in the board view. If you're wondering what this is our analog view. We can just add tasks by using the project view from much earlier in the sequence, where you can just add things without dates to a day. So I can say I want to do that on Thursday, and it will turn up in the Thursday section. So within this, you may well want to also do the same update, go into properties, make sure that you can show your subtask report and show your subtasks. And of course, from here, you're going to want to just rearrange things so it's all making sense. And actually, that's the wrong subtask report. We want the actual subtasks. There they are. Look at that, it's working really beautifully. Now, in the previous video, if we go to our project dashboard, we also created within this a project template. So I'm just going to go in and edit that, because you may well within here want to also add within this the filters that you're going to need in order to view the subtasks. So what we currently have in here is where related project contains new project template. I would add a role in here, add an or where project parent task contains new project template. And that is going to then ensure that you do see all of your project tasks that are subtasks within that view as well. So that is going to do it for our full tour of how to add subtasks and dependencies into the system. I did say this one would be advanced. You can use it as much as you like. Some people just don't want to use subtasks and dependencies, or you might just want to use the subtask element of this and not the dependent tasks. But if you're wanting to build structured groups of tasks, it's really powerful. And in fact, in my system, I've actually added to it a new parent and subtask button where you can create automations which will essentially build entire groups of parent and subtasks within the system. But that one is probably one to check out in future, or maybe go check out my Notion buttons video that's currently already on the channel. Well, that just about does it for this project and task manager build in the Notion from Scratch series. 4 videos within the series to build this entire thing, so make sure you check out the others if you just used this video to learn about subtasks and dependencies. Hit the like button if you found this valuable. It really makes a difference to me and the channel to reach other people with this stuff, and subscribe if you're not already. But most importantly, I'd really like you guys to comment below and let me know what should be next in this series. It really helps to hear from you so I can tailor the content. I'm thinking something like maybe a notebook build or a knowledge management build, let me know. And of course, get over to bettercreating.com, sign up to the Notion from Scratch mailing list for other useful content around this and updates on these videos, as well as checking out all of my other useful resources on there. And I'd better get back to creating.